Alright guys, welcome back to Reviewers Assemble, episode 5 now of this little show here, this MCU review. My name is Kyle, I'm your host, joined once again by Garrett.
Hey.
And Victor. A couple buddies of mine here. We are doing the MCU in Review show. Today we're reviewing Captain America, the First Avenger. So, just again, kind of going off of last week's format here, we're going to spend less time on the recap and just kind of our overall impressions and big points. And then, favorite scenes, least favorite scenes, favorite actor, least favorite actor, score and ranking overall. So changing the format up a little bit, but I think it will be hopefully a better product for everybody here. So, yeah, we'll have Victor kind of start off with what did you think of this movie?
Yeah, so I mean, just a quick kind of recap or insight into Captain America. If you haven't seen it, make sure you watch it. We'll tell you a little bit about it. If you have seen it, a lot of this will make sense to you guys. So, essentially with Captain America, he is the first Avenger. Literally right in the title, he's the first Avenger. He exists before, everyone, yeah.
It goes back to 1942. So.
Yeah, so it's back in the 40s. We're at war with Germany and stuff like that. So, it's a really cool aspect. One thing I love about this movie specifically is he is truly and passionately a great human being who just adamantly wants to be a soldier. He wants to do his part. You see all the slogans of, join us or help your country, we want you. You see all those slogans, and he is the prototypical I want to be in the military. He gets denied. One scientist believes in him, and he gets his opportunity. And he ends up taking, some sort of serum that, Howard Stark, Tony Stark's father. All right, so we get, Dr. Ernst sees opportunity, and a great guy with great character, passionately wants to go in and fight the Nazis. He wants to help save America, but he's too small, he's too weak, he's got asthma, every red flag to not be in the military. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Ernst gives him that opportunity. And what we see is, someone would say possibly the most impactful Avenger throughout this entire universe. He's the heart and soul of the Avengers throughout the whole thing, and we'll see that. He shows it right here in the first movie. Overall, it's a great movie. I'm happy I got to watch it again. I'm excited to review it. I can't wait to hear some of your guys' insight. Garrett, what would you say is kind of your favorite aspect of this whole thing, or your favorite scene overall?
So my favorite aspect is really just, I'm a big historical guy, so how this kind of they basically take this story and put it directly into World War II as something that could have happened that was kind of beneath the surface that you didn't really know about. So that was my favorite aspect of it. Favorite scene, I'm really splitting hairs here. There's two that stand out to me. I'm going to touch on both just because I can't decide between the two. The first is when Captain America becomes Captain America in the little pod thing that Howard Stark puts him in. Mm-hmm. And then right when he comes out, one of the agents of Hydra sets off a bomb in the office, explodes it, creates a distraction so he can steal the super serum.
I know what you're going to say right now.
Gets shot, Captain America starts chasing him. You really get a feel for...
Without shoes.
Yep, without shoes. You really get a feel for how much improved this scrawny little kid from Brooklyn is as he's chasing this guy. He literally jumps over an 8-foot fence at one point. So and then you realize, oh, this is it. The guy steals a kid, throws a kid in the river, and the kid's keep going after him. I can swim, don't worry about it. He jumps down and breaks a submarine, and really badass scene. I'm gonna steal two thunder scenes here because I couldn't pick between that one.
Baby?
I'm gonna do two. I don't even care. Second one is he liberates the 107th Battalion and goes in, grabs them, and I'm not even gonna go on to the scene. I'm gonna go into when they return, and he basically just shows up and looks at Tommy Lee Jones and he goes, I want to turn myself in for disciplinary action, and Tommy Lee Jones just goes, that won't be necessary, soldier, right. And walks away.
Not to cut you off, Garrett, but right before that, Tommy Lee is actually writing up his death certificate where he's he's saying like, what does he say? Steve Rogers went missing in action. We can only presume he's killed in action. He says, and he's like writing up with like the death notes to like his family or whatever. And then right after that he shows up. That's a badass scene.
Realize it, and he just kind of like eats all his words. Like, yeah, we're not going to do that. We're not going to save the battalion. We're going to try and win this war.
He picks on Peggy. He says, this didn't work out because you had a crush.
Yep.
And she's like, it wasn't a crush, and then he shows up.
I know I
after
took
that.
2 big scenes there, so feel free to piggyback on those and capitalize on anything I didn't say.
That's fine. But that first scene you brought up, when he finally comes out of the serum and he starts running. Remember how he's running, he's like, I'm kind of fast. And then you see him like, boom, turn it on.
Great scene where he crashes into like a jewelry store because he doesn't
can't control his speed.
He's like, oh yeah, he like.
You know what that reminds me of though? Remember when Tony first builds like the actual Iron Man suit when he's back in his lab and he's like shoots to the roof, like whatever. That kind of reminds me of that. It's like, holy shit, I get a lot of power.
He has to adjust to the powers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. Kyle, what's your favorite scene or aspect of this movie?
Definitely one of the favorite scenes is the one Garrett touched on here. The opening scene. The one part I didn't like about the scene is the kid swimming, because like that's a big moment where he takes the kid hostage and he's like I'm gonna shoot the kid, and then he runs out of bullets, and then he like ain't, because Captain America doesn't have any weapons. What I really like about this chase scene is that he uses like the car door as a shield.
Yeah.
I noticed like throughout this movie, like he uses the shield, which he eventually gets,
foreshadowing.
the Captain America shield. He doesn't have like a gun, or he's just chasing after him with his raw speed, his new power. And like he gets to the villain and he like runs out of bullets. He tries to shoot the kid, but then he tries to shoot and he's out of bullets. He throws the gun and then he just throws the kid in the river. And I was like, oh, watching this, I'm like, oh, Captain America's gotta go save this kid. Kid's like, no, I can swim. And I'm like, it kind of took like all the steam out of that thing. So then he just kept chasing him, but then he, like you said, chases the sub underneath, which was, he's got like a Batman sub basically, where he goes underneath and Captain America somehow swims up to him, but he's got super speed and everything. So that was one of my favorite scenes for sure. There's a lot of really good scenes. I love the whole bit when he's first starting out as Captain America, where he joins and he's reading the lines on the back of his shield when he's like the choir boy or whatever, where what does he say? Like the bond sales go up, and he's like a
spokesperson.
He says like 10% of the bonds go up every state he visits, and he's like the choir boy, and he's like reading the lines behind the shield, and eventually he learns the lines, and he's like, it's a bullet for your best man, and he ends up punching Hitler a couple of times. There's like a great scene later on where he says like, do you even know what you're doing? And he's like, oh, I knocked out Hitler over 2,000 times or whatever. The guys are like, what are you talking about? Yeah, so like there's a lot of really great scenes I thought in here. That when he first gets his powers, just his whole thing where Peggy tells him like he could be so much more. Going ahead to when he frees the battalion, where unfortunately as far as we know, he loses Bucky off the train. But that scene's awesome where he's like, just call me Captain America. There's just a lot of great scenes. I don't know if I can narrow it down to like one or two. It's like I felt myself really enjoying like a whole lot of this movie, where it was like hit after hit after hit, where I used to think this movie was like too slow and boring, and it starts slow, and like rewatching this movie, I like was kind of expecting it to be good but not great, and like I had a blast watching this movie.
That was good.
But yeah, so that's a couple of scenes I like there. Throughout the movie, I really liked. So I don't think there were any like really poor scenes, but Vic, if you want to touch on your favorite parts.
Yeah, no, I actually don't have like a particular scene. I think the movie is pretty well rounded. But as far as an aspect, I love like the boys that are in the military. I think it really reminds you of how we've been taught how like the military guys were, like a bunch of drunks, just like war hungry, gun happy, ready to get out there and fight. So I love a couple of things. One, I love when he becomes Captain America. He's a stud. He goes back to the lab to meet with Howard Stark, and like the military secretary, the blonde chick who's kind of hot, comes on to him right away, ends up kissing him. Like he would have never gone girls before he became like this jack military guy. So I love that.
Natalie Dormer from Game of Thrones.
Yes, thank you. That's who it was. I couldn't think of who it was.
We'll look up her name. But.
Yeah, no, that was great. And then like later on when Tommy Lee Jones finally realizes like he's a legitimate soldier, and they say, let's build a team. He goes, I'm already working on it. He goes down to the bar, and he's talking to the boys. He goes, we're in. One condition. You gotta buy a round. Or open a tab.
Open a tab.
I love the camaraderie of all those guys throughout the whole movie. He proves himself one time because he saved their asses. But they have his back throughout the whole thing.
They're willing to go to war, literally go to war. With
yeah,
him.
between like going onto the train together, which R.I.P. Bucky.
It's like we got a 10-second window or something, or 10-minute window. But he says like we're
bugs on a windshield.
Bugs on a windshield if we miss that. Yeah.
Yeah, like
cool.
I
zip lining.
I loved how that group came together. It was kind of like, and we just did Thor before. I like that little group of military buddies were okay in Thor. Like I kind of like them. But this group was just way more realistic. It was so cool. Yeah. You had some diversity in there too, which I loved. But overall, I mean, that was probably my favorite aspect of the movie. Was just the camaraderie with all the military guys.
And Garrett actually put up the point that like we were watching this again, and like the guy from Thor is actually the guy in Captain America.
Oh, the Chinese or Asian guy.
They take the same guy.
Yeah, which is kind of funny.
Which I think it's the same guy. It's at least very similar.
Yeah, so that was kind of immersion breaking, I think, because that's what I noticed too right away. I was like, isn't that the guy from Thor? So, hopefully they don't reuse too many actors there. But, yeah, there's a lot of scenes. Like, I have a hard time picking a couple scenes because throughout this movie I thought I was like, wow, I can't believe how good this scene is or this scene. Or
I agree.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, what we can talk about some of our best scenes. What would you guys would say some of like the worst scenes or even aspects of this movie? Every movie has flaws, especially in something like this. So, Kyle, what do you think? If you know, go ahead. Garrett, if whoever wants to jump in.
I might need some more time to think about it.
I think we all probably might need, because there's not a lot of downtime in this movie. There's not a lot of bad scenes.
For me, there's a lot of slow parts. The beginning is kind of boring to me. I like the relationship with him and Bucky. I think that's great. But just him trying to get in the military and like being turned down by the girls at the carnival, that stuff kind of pisses me off. And then
you don't like that part?
I don't know. I mean, it
because to me that Bill, like, I loved all that where like he's with Bucky. And he's like, oh, it's the girls are like, oh, we want to go dancing, and he's like, all right, hold on, and he's like, maybe next time or whatever, and then like,
he goes to sign up for the military again,
and then eventually he meets Bucky, or I don't know if they meet, but like he gets beat up by that big dude, and then Bucky saves his ass because he says like, pick on someone your own size, but yeah. I think the part that's so, not to cut you off, Vic, but like I think the part that's so good, and like. Throughout the movie, we see the reason Steve Rogers is so well regarded by Stanley Tucci's character, Dr. Abraham, is that Steve Rogers is very clearly the skinniest, like scrawny dude. He's like 90 pounds, like soaking wet. Like personally, the digital like creation or whatever they did, I think is weird with Chris Evans.
Great, yeah.
I mean, they did the best they could, but like it's always like unsettling or weird to me when I watch it, but. Like before he gets the super serum, like the best thing or the reason that they choose him, because they say that the serum infects, like it brings out the best or it brings out the worst in you. So like the villain Red Skull, I think for lack of a better term, they say that like he had the serum, but like it brings out the worst in him. So like that's why he becomes like a super villain. The reason they pick Steve Rogers. Because he's such a good dude. Like he jumps on the grenade. When they say it's a dummy grenade, everyone runs away. He's the only one that jumps on the grenade. He fights that big bully in the alley before Bucky saves him, and he's getting his ass kicked. And no matter what, he's like, oh, you just don't give up, do you? And he's like, I can do this all day. Which he ends up saying a lot, and that's like kind of Captain America's. It's his like motto, which is great. But like no matter being the smallest guy and like not the scrawniest dude, like he always comes back for more. And then like there's a great scene in the car when he's with Peggy where he's like, oh, I know this neighborhood. He's like, I got beat up behind the theater over there. He's like, and in that alleyway and over here.
Shows, did you ever think about running away?
Yeah, you ever think about running away? And he's like, I forget what he says, but he's like, basically that's never been an option for him because he's like, I gotta stand up for myself no matter what. And so that speaks to his character, and that's why like they think he's the best one for the serum.
Yeah. So for me, the overall worst scene, and we just ripped it apart as we watched the ending of this. I don't understand why Captain America stayed in the plane and crashed into the ice and into the water. And I don't know what the options are, and obviously this is all hypothetical because it's a movie, not real life, but a parachute out the back, or as you're about to hit the ice, it's Captain America, just do a somersault out the back door, or, I don't know, anything. Or dive into the water. We've seen him dive into the water or jump out of elevators in the future and things like that. maybe he was still learning his powers and his strength and his resiliency. I don't know, but that part just pissed me off. And I know it was really just a play to kind of fast forward into the next movie, since it's 1942. Everything else is taking place in the 2010s ish. So I understand for the movie and business aspect, they were just really trying to find a way to fast forward. But that part pissed me off. I don't know why. And it's just an unrealistic scene where that's like Thor not flying when we know he can fucking fly. It's just do it and save your ass. But I know it was for the movie and for the business side of it. But that scene was probably the most aggravating for me because it's so emotional and deep. He got his first kiss with Peggy. He's finally getting a real relationship. I think they did a great job developing this relationship and that connection.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And then he fucking dies.
Yeah, they say like save the dance or whatever.
Yeah.
That's a sweet moment, but yeah, I think for me, like the only scene I can think of, like the bad scene, is probably that plane scene, and I like the overall idea, but like we were rewatching this, and I was like, yeah, the only reason I can think of is like maybe he needs to keep his hand on like the not the guidance, but like maybe he needs to keep piloting it so that it goes into the ice. So that it doesn't blow up, because he's got like a bomb on that plane that's gonna blow up.
It's got like all the atom bombs that they were gonna deliver.
It's gonna blow up like Boston, New York, the Chicago, whatever. Some of them they released before, but like the only thing I could think of, and obviously it's an MCU movie, like we, suspend disbelief there, but like I guess either there were no parachutes or but like we said, you can either jump into a lake or something. That's the one scene that I feel like is kind of a stretch, because it is like, why didn't you jump out or whatever, but like the only thing I can think of, I guess, to justify it is that he had to stay on this control, so that he made sure that it went into the ice, because maybe if he jumped out, then maybe the plane starts going up or something, I don't know, but maybe then the bomb goes off and it's like all for naught. So that was the one scene I feel like didn't fit. I thought overall this movie was so well paced and so well good. I know Vic said he didn't really like the opening scenes with like Bucky and all that stuff, and it was slow. And I used to think that too, but I loved like every portion of this movie, rewatching it. So like I think the pacing is great.
Interested to hear your rankings later then.
Yeah, we'll see how the rankings stack up. But
Garrett, what do you got for worst scene?
Yeah.
My worst scene, it's gonna be something different. It's not even a bad scene. I wouldn't call it a bad scene. I'd call it a scene that kind of just irritates me. Mm-hmm. When they finally, when Hydra weaponizes the Tesseract. Red Skull, before he's Red Skull, lures like 3 Nazi generals into a lab and just goes basically just obliterates them, because he wants to separate and kind of defect from the Nazis, because he thinks now that they've weaponized this, Hydra can take over the world.
Yeah, he's more powerful than Hitler.
He and it just drives me insane. I'm like, you just harness this power. Why are you going to defect from your army that is helping you and funding you and all of this? Why not just work with them to take over the earth, and then you own the power. You can become as powerful as you want. Doesn't do that. Instead, just obliterates 3 Nazi generals just to demonstrate the power of his new weapons.
Yeah.
I was like, I understand this. This is them defecting, them thinking they're more powerful than, Nazi Germany is, which they were once they weaponized it, but drove me insane. I didn't like it. I thought it was a bad move in terms of war by Red Skull, and, but that's why he's kind of insane, and people previously in the movie said that, like, Hitler takes it to a certain extent, but this guy goes even further. It's like he believes in fantasy, and it's like, it's true. Like, that guy would go to extremes over all of his weaponry.
So it sounds like you kind of like him as a character overall, just not that scene.
Yeah, just that scene. I think it was just a poor play on his part in terms of war.
Now, where would you put him on your strongest Avenger? Is he up there?
Strongest Avenger? No. No. I wouldn't. He's like, person I'd probably put up there.
Red Skull?
It's tough. Like, Red Skull was good. I might go Howard Stark. And reason being is just every scene he was in, he kind of captivated you. He kind of lured you in because of the backstory that the MCU universe has already given you to this point.
Yeah.
Like, you already know about the Stark Expo, and then you see the Stark Expo like,
it is
50
funny in like
years prior.
1940s. It is funny.
50 years prior from the one in Iron Man 2 that we just watched.
Yeah,
and you see the differences, and you see him unveiling his floating car invention, and you compare that to when Tony drops in with his Iron Man suit like 70 some odd years later. You're like, so, and then when Iron Man selects his shield and Howard Stark is laying out all the shield option for him, and he's like, oh, to take this one, he goes, well, that's just a prototype. And it's like, that, it's the only bit of vibranium steel we have. It's just, no matter what scene he was in this movie, because of the backstory that's already been played on him, I think you were captured. You were like, oh, I need to listen in on this because this is something that directly affects the rest of these movies.
And this is young Howard Stark because it's not played by the same guy from Mad Men that plays.
And you saw him, and you saw him with the showgirls on stage at the Stark Expo. So you see the similarities between him and Tony as like the playboy there.
Kyle mentioned that funny scene with Peggy on the plane, and he's like,
a fondue scene.
So Agent Carter, fondue later? And then Cap's like, so you guys been fondueing?
That was an interesting scene because like Cap is clearly kind of hitting on Peggy there, and they're in the scene where that's a cool scene where Captain America like jumps out of the plane.
Yeah.
And again speaks to Steve Rogers' heroism where it's like he just jumps out because they're not quite at the destination.
While they're under fire too.
They're not quite at the destination, and they start getting hit on, and they're kind of surprised by that. And Captain America just jumps out and he goes, you know what? He's like, when I get down here, he's like, you guys turn this bird around and like get to safety. And Peggy says like, you can't take orders from me. He's like, I'm a captain. And I was like, oh. But he jumps out, and then before he jumps out though, they say like Captain America's hitting on Peggy because they've kind of had like a vibe going.
Yeah.
But then Howard Stark is riding the plane, and as you touched on, Garrett, Howard Stark is kind of like an entrepreneur. He's a smooth talker where he's like every scene he's in, he captivates you. Like
even in that scene, Peggy calls him like the best civilian pilot she's ever seen. Like, so this guy, like, just his
jack of all trades.
Reputation precedes
which
him.
reminds us of Tony,
the
right?
Stark name continues on. It's just for some reason, like he just whatever part he's in this movie, like as awesome as Chris Evans is, which he is. It's just, this guy shows up and you're like, oh, I want to pay attention because this directly connects to everything else.
Yeah, and then I guess this is kind of also included in our favorite scenes, but also there's a great scene at the bar later where like Peggy shows up in a hot red dress, and like all the guys are like, oh damn. And they take a look at her.
Bucky shoots his shot too.
Bucky shoots a shot, but he also says, I'm invisible at the end. Cause he's Bucky, so Peggy walks in, she's wearing like this hot dress, this red dress, and like Steve and Peggy have like this nice chemistry going, where she said like I'm just waiting for the right partner, which is a really good throwback to the taxi scene from earlier where
he said it to her.
Yeah, she's like, well, I forget what she asked him, but she says like, well, what are you waiting for? And he says, I'm waiting for the right partner. And Peggy like smiles. She's like, oh, that's cute. And then like she throws it back at him later after he's like yoked. And then,
but he's still shy, skinny Steve at that time.
He's still got the same personality, but like there's a great scene at the bar where like I thought it was Howard Stark, I guess, but it is Bucky now thinking back on it. Where Bucky, or she's like, oh, maybe we can take a dance, and Bucky says, what are we waiting for then? And she just disregards Bucky completely, and she goes, okay, I'll see you later. And it's like,
he's like, wow, I'm literally invisible now.
he says like, what am I turning into you or something?
Like, so who would be your strongest Avenger?
We're 5 movies in, right? That's our 5th movie.
5 movies, yep.
This is the first time I'm going to do it. Lead character, Chris Evans. Captain America. I think, I don't love him in the beginning because it's a little slow and it's a little weird. But overall, from the beginning through the end, I think Cap's awesome. And I think the selling point, and I shouldn't look into the future, but he stays true to his character for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 movies to this the whole series. Between being, obviously he's a very good-looking guy. He's jacked. He's Captain America, goddammit. I mean, he doesn't hook up or have any love affair with any single woman. He stays true to who he is. Great character guy. He believes in the greater good for the world. And it literally starts with this movie. He carries it all the way through the 2 hours or whatever the runtime is of this movie, through the rest of the series. And I don't know. I really liked his character. I like him as Steve Rogers when he's outside of the Cap suit, and I love him as Captain America as well. I think he crushed in this movie. For me, and I don't want to, jump too far ahead, but it's right up there with Iron Man for me, at least as far as the development of the character and his origin story. It really is. So, Captain America, 100% strongest Avenger in this movie.
And I think last week we talked a little bit about Thor, how we talked about like Thor, Chris Hemsworth is Thor, and like he just fits into the role right away. And I think Chris Evans as Steve Rogers does an even better job of that.
Yeah.
It's like no matter what roles Chris Evans does going forward, like he will always be Captain America. And like I think right away, at least for me, like when I watched this, I was like, that is Captain America. Like, and he does such a great job of portraying the little guy who's got the heart. And like he at first he doesn't have the skill set or like the build, and he's got like all the health problems, which is why he can't get into the army. There's like a great scene where they keep rejecting him, and he's got like asthma and all this stuff. They like run through the list.
And he just keeps going for it.
Yeah, and then like eventually Stanley Tucci's character gives him that chance there. Yeah, I'm actually on that note. I'm actually going to go Stanley Tucci as my strongest Avenger.
Was it Ernstke?
Dr. Ernstke, yeah, played by Stanley Tucci. I didn't even know that was Stanley Tucci. I just recently watched like the Transformers movies where Stanley Tucci's in there, and they do a really good job with the makeup here, where he's got like glasses and a beard. But he was just really captivating for me. Where like every scene, he's kind of trying to convince Tommy Lee Jones's character, who's the general, I think.
Yeah.
He's trying to. He doesn't believe in Steve Rogers, like pretty much the whole movie, at least until he definitely gets the battalion back. And that guy, Dr. Abraham, is kind of like giving him like, hey, like this guy's got the heart, like he's got something different. Like I trust in this guy, and that's when like we get the great scene of Steve jumping on the grenade when everyone else runs away.
And he gives him the eyebrow raise too. Like his
so
role is so subtle, but like. That happens, and Ernstke looks at Tommy Lee Jones. He's like, he gives him a little look, like,
and he says
see?
he's still skinny.
Yeah, he's still skinny.
Yeah, that was a great scene.
Tommy Lee was great in this too.
And then there's like the great scene where the doctor sits down with Steve, and I'm forgetting this. I'm not doing justice to the scene, but like he sits down, he tells him a story like right before he does like the super serum and everything. But he like believes in Steve Rogers from the beginning, and I just thought he did a really good job of like. Really sticking out to me and like being very captivating.
Well, that scene you're talking about, they're like, he sits down and he's like, you want a drink? You want some schnapps? And he goes forward and he's like, no, you have a procedure tomorrow. You can't drink anything.
Oh.
And the next day, as he's about to go to the procedure,
he's in the super serum. He's like, I can take some of that schnapps. And he's like, did you save some of that? He's like, not as much as I'd like.
Yeah.
So he like just
that part's
schnapps.
funny, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. But yeah, I think he's not in a lot of this movie. He gets killed when Captain America takes the serum.
Yeah, probably
and then
30
like
minutes in.
the one agent or whatever that we talked about, that Garrett brought up earlier, where the guy that's like wearing the glasses, he's like the one sleeper agent or whatever that, which is a cool scene that really quick that we didn't touch on, where he, Captain America asks him when he catches him finally, he says, "Who are you?" And he says, cut off one head and two more will sprout. Which is like the Hydra.
Looking back,
he eats the cyanide to kill himself before he can know it.
After seeing more movies in the future, looking back, knowing how deep Hydra is into the United States, especially in the future, remember there's like a senator or someone who brings the Hydra guy in. I don't know if you remember that, and he actually introduces the Hydra guy to like Tommy Lee Jones and Dr. Ernstke and whatever. And in my mind, knowing how in depth or embedded Hydra is, I was waiting for that senator to come out as Hydra at some point too. Rewatching Captain America, after seeing them all again.
Yeah.
I was waiting for him to come out because he's the one who brought the Hydra guy into it. It was like, hey, this is so and so, blah blah blah. Introduce him like he's a close friend. The whole time he's actually Hydra and ends up killing Ernstke. But
yeah, Hydra is a good twist. We'll get into that eventually as the movie goes on. But I think that's a really cool part of the MCU.
So I mean, you got Ernstke, Cap. Who was your
Howard Stark.
Howard Stark strongest? What do you guys have for weakest?
So, basing off what you just said a second ago, I'm going to go right into it. Red Skull. I think Red Skull was the weakest, and here's why. I don't really at any point think I hated him. I think, obviously, you think Nazi...
For a villain.
For a villain, yeah. Like, you hate him because of what he stands for, but you don't hate him because of who he is. Yeah, he shot the guy in the tomb, the guy that no one really cared about. He stole the Tesseract. He shot. Well, he actually didn't even shoot the Doctor that turned Cap. That was one of the minions. So even though he existed, he didn't really do much of anything. He killed a couple Nazi Germany generals and tried to take over the army and lead Hydra, but he never really even fought with Cap that much. For a villain, he didn't do it for me.
You know who that is? Hugo Weaving.
Yep.
You know what great trilogy he's in?
Oh, tell me what it is, but I
The
don't know.
Matrix.
Yep, he is
really?
Agent Smith.
Agent
The
Smith.
entire
Matrix.
time I was
Yes.
watching that movie, I'm like, where is this guy
Yes,
from?
I just had to look it up
Where
because
is
I
this
didn't know
guy
his
from?
name.
Hugo Weaving is a big name.
Yeah, I mean, I
But
liked
that's
him in The
He
Matrix.
was a better villain in that than he was in this.
Yep.
Yeah, he was very one-dimensional in
And
this.
because of that, easily gets the Baby Arms Award for me. I just, was he a cool villain? Yes, but I didn't hate him. I just didn't, there was nothing that was like, oh, I really want Cap to get him. I really want the United States military to get this guy. I was like, you know what, he is what he is, he's leading Hydra, whatever.
Yeah, for Baby Arms, maybe a surpriser, but I'm gonna go with Bucky Barnes.
It's not a bad choice.
I like Bucky's character overall in the MCU. Spoilers, we'll see more of him later, but I thought, at least in Captain America: First Avenger, I thought it was kind of a weak role. I did like their interactions with him and where he saves Cap in the beginning, but I thought overall they don't give him much to do in this movie, and I just think I want to say he almost doesn't get enough screen time because we get his death. Again, spoilers, but hopefully you've maybe seen the MCU movies at this point. He falls off the train. We think he's dead. I don't know how he survived that fall because
It's still
very
I mean,
clearly
they experimented a little bit on him, so.
very clearly he falls off and it's like a crevice and it looks to me rewatching the scene. I'm like, you should have definitely died from that.
Yeah.
Fall. But whenever it's the MCU, we'll allow it. But yeah, I think there's a couple nice scenes with him and Cap where they're hanging out with the girls and they're going to Stark Expo and it's this cute double date thing. But overall, I just thought he didn't bring much to the story, and I think he's the weakest character. And I think this is kind of where the Baby Arms gets complicated, where it's I don't think he did a bad job. I just think of the performances between Tommy Lee Jones, Peggy Carter, Captain America, Howard Stark, they're all great, and I think he's just the weakest of all of them. So I'm going to give Bucky Barnes my Baby Arms award this week.
That's fair. I mean, it's funny because after watching Thor, I love some of the supporting cast, and we went over it, Darcy and all those supporting people, Civ, Odin, I loved all those guys. In this, the supporting role, and I want to even go kind of deeper than, outside of Cap, outside of Peggy. I don't love the scientist, I can't think of his name, that works for Red Skull.
Oh, with the glasses?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to look up his name, but
Yeah.
I didn't like him either.
Yeah, I don't love him. He pisses me off. Bucky was really weak in this, and we know he has a bigger impact in the future, but he was really weak in this. Looking back after, already going forward, why is his role so small in this? It's really just the beginning and a little bit of military in the middle, and that's pretty much it. They kill him off pretty quickly once Steve gets going, which, it transcends into greatness in the future. But in this part, so a lot of that stuff kind of pissed me off. Some of the military guys weren't great. I couldn't stand the Hydra guy at the beginning. I felt like as soon as they kind of zoomed in on his face and how serious and pissed off he looked, that he was clearly sketchy, right off the bat.
Red Skull?
No, the Hydra guy who kills Ernski, who's undercover.
Oh.
Right off the bat, if you watch that first scene when he walks in the doorway.
Very obvious.
It was just very obvious.
They keep cutting back
Always
to him.
looking around.
There was very obvious cuts where I was I remember what happened because we've seen, I remember Cap for the most part, but they really zoom in on him a lot where everyone else goes and it's just him, and I was like, oh, this is very obvious foreshadowing.
Yeah, and I guess those are kind of things that piss me off. Overall, there's not very many bad characters. If I was going to actually pick the weakest, it's probably that scientist. And if I was going to really pinpoint him, it's probably because he's so unsure of himself the whole time. He's like, oh, I think I can do this, but he's fucking just doing it all. He's creating the weapons, he's harnessing the power of the Tesseract, but he's just never confident about it. He's just little too goofy, too geeky for me, especially considering he's the right-hand man to Red Skull, who's a psychotic, killer. So they're probably my weakest for me. Where does that leave us now? We got rankings and scores, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll go first because I love this movie. So rewatching this movie, like I've seen Cap. I think we've all seen Cap probably a couple times at least, just because I think it's one of the better movies and the more popular movies out there. I haven't seen this movie in a little bit, and so like I always thought this movie was slow at the beginning, and I was like, I don't really love the 1942 setting. Completely wrong. Rewatching this movie, like for me, I'm going 9-3 on this one. Like
you went over Iron Man?
Oh yeah, this is a clear number one for me. Like I love this movie from start to finish, and like I love Iron Man, and this movie blows it away for me. Like in terms of like just like the better plot development, Cap and Iron Man is always like a wrestle for me. Where like I love both characters so much, but like to me, I can understand the people who say Cap is better than Iron Man because like in my opinion, like Cap is like it's just that like that underdog hero is so easy to root for and see his arc develop from like the beginning where he's a skinny kid to where like they get like the motorcycle scene where he's like blowing through the base and he's like kicking people's ass with his shield. He's throwing his shield and like he becomes a real hero throughout the span of this movie, which is like just
and by choice. That's the one thing I do love by it.
And that's the thing is that he never has the physical stature, but he always has the heart. And then he finally gets rewarded with the physical stature of the serum. And then like
he's all day.
The complete package. He can do this all day. I mean, he's I think one of the best characters in the MCU. And it's like for me, this is a very clear number one. Like 9-3 is what I'm going with, and I'm like so excited.
So that's your number one?
Yeah, from start to finish, I don't think there's very many scenes. I mean, I think we thought the scene at the end was probably...
So you have Captain America?
So Captain America for me, Iron Man 2, Thor, and then Hulk.
Okay. 1 through 5 so far.
Yeah, I'll go right into it. 8-3. I think I don't put it above the first Iron Man, but that's because of personal preferences. But everything you said, Kyle, is absolutely right. Has the heart, doesn't have the physical stature, eventually gets it, does everything the right way, is the American hero. There's so much great story and character building here. It really shows you the character arc, and like, hey, he starts off skinny kid from Brooklyn, gets some powers, stays the same man, fights for his country, does what's right, doesn't want the glory, just wants to be the hero. He's what the Avengers want. That's why he's pretty much the leader of the Avengers. And only reason I put him right behind Iron Man is because I find Iron Man's gadgets to be pretty effing cool. So I like that a little bit better. So I put it right behind there. So we're gonna go Iron Man, and then like basically Captain America is the 1A, 1B. But it is number 2 for me, and then Iron Man 2, Thor, and then Incredible Hulk. And with that, we'll go to Vic.
Cool. I'm pretty much on the same page as Garrett. I'm putting it right in as an 8-2. I think I had Iron Man 1 as 8-4, and I think I had Iron Man 2 as 8-1. So I got them pinned right in the middle right there. There's something about Tony Stark in the first Iron Man. He's so compelling as a character, and I think that slightly trumps Captain America. I did just think in my head that at the end of all 23 movies?
23, I think.
23 movies, we should do a recap show and rank our favorite Avengers for the entire series, because it's going to be hard for me to pick, but Captain America right now in my heart is probably number 1, but Tony Stark still kind of beats him as far as Iron Man 1 and Captain America First Avenger for right now. So right now I got Iron Man 1, Cap, Iron Man 2, Thor, Hulk. And it's funny, I texted my fiance, coronavirus, I finally got her to watch every single movie. She's watched all of them. Some of them she's even watched twice. I've had to watch them like 4 times at this point because I'm rewatching them for this, rewatching them for her.
Had to watch.
Yeah, had to, I hated it. She actually has the same exact ratings as me. She gave this an 8.1. She's not an amateur. She watches pizza reviews.
No rookie scores.
Yeah, no rookie scores from her. She's the best, and she's gorgeous. Thank you for letting me be here with the boys.
Shout out.
Yeah, quick shout out. Overall, boys, I'm pumped we rewatched this one, to be honest. Because I was down on it. I told you guys last week I was down on it. But no, it's a great movie.
It's a good time.
Yeah, for sure.
And with that, we will probably close out with the ending that we still do not have.
We don't need one, but what do we got next week?
Always subscribe.
Next week we got the big one, the Avengers.
The
Fucking
first
right.
Avengers.
The first Avengers.
So make sure to subscribe before then because you're going to want to tune into that.
Yeah, Avengers is awesome.
Yeah, the origin movies are done. We were going into the Avengers, which I still remember seeing in the theaters. I think, Garrett, we probably saw that.
I think it was there with you.
And
no,
we make a
no.
huge upgrade. Mark Ruffalo.
Yes,
Thank
yeah,
God.
first time
Makes
we've
an
seen
appearance.
Hulk since. This is the first time we've seen Hulk since Edward Norton's Hulk.
Since he was the fought the Abomination.
But yeah, Avengers should be super exciting. It's the first time we see all of the characters together, the characters we've loved, I guess all the characters we've loved.
Yeah.
But yeah, tune in next week for
Yep.
Avengers. And until next time,
Yep. Thanks for watching, guys.
peace.
Peace. 5 episodes in, we don't need an outro.
All right.
That is
Yeah.
our outro. It's not having an outro.